So if we summarize, we see that differentiated classroom, a teacher proactively plans and carries out varied approaches to, here's our 3 words again, content, process, and product. And now we're adding the last piece, in anticipation of and response to student readiness, interests, and learning needs. And we have a matrix. Across the top, we have content, process, and product, our 3 areas in which we differentiate in. Content refers to what we teach. And we can differentiate content, we can adapt what we teach, or we can adapt how we give students access to what we want them to learn. And that's a key distinction that I want you to hold on to. Process refers to how the students make sense of what they're learning, how they own it. And Tomlinson refers to these as sense-making activities. And sense-making activities are those activities that help the students move from one level of learning to the next levels of learning. And I always think of this in terms of the Bloom's taxonomy. All right, so it's moving from knowledge and understanding to application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And how does the teacher help the students through the use of activities move the students into applying the learning? And then the last one is the product. The product is the pulling it all together. This is where the student is creative. This is where the student gets to demonstrate, to expand, to rethink, to show what they've learned. In terms of Madeline Hunter, it's the independent practice. It's the culminating event. If we look at our rows and go back to each of these areas in which we can differentiate according to 3 student characteristics: readiness, interest, and learning profile. Readiness refers to whether or not the tasks are a close match to student skills or levels of understanding. Interest: does the task incite passion, engagement, and curiosity? Learning profile: does the student have the opportunity to complete the task in their preferred learning style? So in each of these 3 areas going across, I can differentiate according to each of the student characteristics. Now, teachers have been doing this successfully in the public school settings for years. This is not a new concept. What we want teachers to try to do is to take this concept and successfully move it into the confinement environment. And in order to do that, we have to add one more piece. We have to say that there's one more piece to this puzzle that Tomlinson didn't add. And that's the environment. Because everything has to be done in our buildings within the context of the environment. In other words, we have to look at differentiation in terms of the content and also in terms of the environment. So let's look at that student who is that high-functioning student at grade level, and he comes into our confinement facility, and all he needs is that chemistry lab. Okay, we're in trouble. I don't know of one facility in the world that has a functioning chemistry lab. But remember, differentiation according to content says that we can differentiate access. And so through modern technology, maybe I can simulate the mixing of hydrogen and sulfide and simulate the rotten egg experiment and do the same thing. And that's what it means to differentiate by content in our environment. To differentiate by process, it means that I'm paying attention to student grouping in a whole new way. I'm not grouping student by reading levels. I'm grouping students by gang affiliation, by behaviors that did happen or didn't happen during the night. And by product is really hard because especially in the short-term environment, we don't have kids for a long enough time often to complete a product. A really good example was an art program at the Cook County Temporary Juvenile Detention Center. They have an arts infusion program in which visiting artists came in. Well, that was tricky enough in itself, because picture X-Acto knives and scissors and smelly glues in our detention center, all right? Artists wanted to come in and do clay tiles, and she wanted to create this mosaic that was 8 foot. The only kids she wanted in class were those that were going to be there for 6 weeks. Okay, we don't have kids for 6 weeks. So when we tried explaining this to her, she was like, well, then I just can't come and do it. So then we sat down with her and we said, okay, let's try to think of your product differently. Let's try to think of your product in a way that individual tiles, kids could do small individual tiles and put these tiles together to make your 8-foot mosaic. The outcome was beautiful. All of these are individual mosaics that kids that stayed for an average of 17 days were able to complete. Educators in confinement facilities have to do everything possible to reach our kids. Differentiated instruction is one of those skills. I want to leave you with a quote that has been inspiring to me. It was said by a teacher, Hiram Gano. So from teacher to teacher, I want to say it to you and hope that it becomes your words. I have come to the frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess the power to make a student's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, a child humanized or dehumanized. Thank you.